The alarm woke Captain Minho Kang from a dreamless sleep. He sat up in his small cabin aboard the Wandering Star and checked the time. 3 a.m, ship time. The exploration vessel had been cruising through the outer fringe for 6 weeks now, mapping star systems that nobody cared about. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. Minho pressed the comm button on his wall panel. "What is it?" "Captain, you need to come to the bridge." It was Jinho Park, the young tactical officer who had night watch duty. His voice sounded strange, excited maybe, or worried. "We picked up something on the long-range scanners." Minho pulled on his uniform and walked through the narrow corridors to the bridge. The Wandering Star was not a large ship. She had a crew of 43 humans, all volunteers who wanted to see the galaxy. Most of them were young, idealistic people who believed the Galactic Coalition was a force for good in the universe. Minho had believed that once, too, 83 years ago, when humanity first joined the Coalition. Now he knew better. The Coalition cared about rules and order and making sure everyone stayed in their proper place. Humans were the newest members, the children at the adult table, and everyone treated them that way. The bridge was quiet when Minho arrived. Jinho stood at his console, staring at his screens. Dr. Hana Lee, the science officer, was there too. She must have been called from her quarters as well. She looked at Minho with wide eyes. "Show me," Minho said. Jinho played the signal. It was faint and broken, cutting in and out. But the message was clear enough. Someone was calling for help. Someone was dying. Minho listened to the distress call 3 times. The aliens called themselves the Valorn. Their planet had been hit by a comet 6 months ago. The impact triggered earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Ash covered their sky and blocked their sun. Their crops were dying. Their oceans were freezing. They needed help. They needed it now. "How far away are they?" Minho asked. 4 days at maximum speed," Hana said. She had already pulled up all the data about the Valorn system. "Captain, according to this signal, they have about 4 billion people on their planet, and they're all going to die if someone doesn't help them." 4 billion lives. Minho felt the weight of that number in his chest. "Send the distress call to Coalition Command. Mark it urgent priority." Jinho nodded and sent the transmission. Then they waited. On a ship in deep space, there was nothing else to do but wait. The response from Coalition Command took 6 hours to arrive. Minho spent those hours reading everything he could about the Valorn. They were an intelligent species who had built cities and art and music. They had families and dreams and fears, just like humans. They had reached their own space age and built satellites and space stations. And now they were dying, and nobody had come to help them. When the message from Coalition Command finally arrived, Minho read it 3 times. He hoped he had misunderstood, but the words were clear. "Ignore distress call. Proceed with current mission parameters. The Valorn system is located in Quarantine Sector and the species is not a Coalition member. Article 7 applies. No intervention is authorized." Minho stared at the screen. He felt cold inside. "They're telling us to leave them to die?" Jinho asked. The young officer looked shocked. "That's exactly what they're saying," Minho replied. Hana pulled up more information on her console. Her hands were shaking slightly. "Captain, I checked the Coalition logs. Over 40 ships have detected this distress call in the past 6 months. Ships from different species, different sectors. Some of them were closer than we are. Some could have been there in days." "And none of them responded," Minho said quietly. "None of them," Hana confirmed. "We're the first ship to even forward the signal to command." Minho sat down in his captain's chair. He felt very tired suddenly. He had been in Starfleet for 20 years. He had fought in the first contact wars when humanity met the galaxy and some species tried to put humans in their place. He had seen the Coalition up close, had learned how it really worked. The coalition talked about cooperation and peace, but it was all built on cold calculations. Cost and benefit, profit and loss, member and non-member. But he had never imagined this. An entire civilization screaming for help, and everyone just ignored them. "Wake up the senior crew," Minho said. "All of them. I want everyone in the conference room in 30 minutes. The conference room was crowded. Besides Minho, Hana, and Jinho, there was Yuna Choi, the chief engineer. She was a brilliant woman who could fix anything and frequently broke regulations to do it. There were also the department heads, the medical staff, and the crew representatives. Minho explained the situation. He showed them the distress call and the response from Coalition Command. Then he told them about the 40 other ships that had heard the Valorn crying for help and had done nothing. The room was silent when he finished. "So what do we do?" asked Yuna. She already knew what Minho was thinking. They all did. "Coalition law is clear," Jinho said. He was young, but he was smart. "The Valorn aren't members. They're in a quarantine sector. We don't have authorization to enter their system, let alone provide aid. If we disobey, there will be consequences for all of humanity. We could lose our seat on the Coalition Council. They could impose sanctions on our colonies." 4 billion people, Hana said softly. "That's how many people are going to die. 4 billion individuals with lives and families and hopes. And we're just going to sail past them because they're not in our club? It's not our responsibility," Jinho argued, but his voice was weak. He didn't believe his own words. "We're an exploration ship. We don't have the resources for a planetary rescue. What could we possibly do for them?" Minho looked around the room at his crew. These were good people. They had joined Starfleet because they wanted to explore, to learn, to make contact with other species. They believed in something bigger than themselves. "I can't order you to do this," Minho said. "The Coalition has made their position clear. If we respond to this distress call, we'll be breaking their laws. There will be consequences. They might court-martial me. They might sanction Earth. But I need to know one thing." He stood up and looked each person in the eye. "If you heard someone screaming for help, would you walk away because helping them might cost you something? Would you let someone die because saving them wasn't convenient? Is that who we are now? Is that what being civilized means?" Nobody spoke for a long moment. Then Yuna raised her hand. "I vote we go help them." "Me too," Hana said immediately. One by one, every person in the room raised their hand. Even Jinho, after a moment's hesitation, put his hand up. "It's unanimous then," Minho said. He felt something settle in his chest. It might be the end of his career, but at least he would be able to sleep at night. "Set course for the Valorn system, maximum speed, and someone get me a direct line to Coalition Command. I want to tell them exactly what we think of Article 7. The wandering star changed course. Behind them, dozens of Coalition observers noted the deviation. Warning messages began arriving immediately. Threats of consequences, of sanctions, of disciplinary action. Minho deleted them all and focused on the view screen showing the stars ahead. 4 days to the Valorn system. 4 days to do something that mattered. The wandering star pushed through space at maximum speed, her engines running hot. In her quarters, Dr. Hana Lee studied everything she could find about the Valorn. The distress signal contained more than just a cry for help. It included data about their species, their culture, their biology. The Valorn had 6 limbs and skin that glowed with different colors. They lived in family groups and created beautiful art. They had literature and music and mathematics. Hana watched recordings of Valorn children playing in parks that no longer existed. She listened to their songs, even though she couldn't understand the words. She saw images of their cities, their oceans, their forests. All of it was dying now, buried under ash and ice. She cried while she worked. She didn't care who saw. On the bridge, Captain Minho received the official response from Coalition Command. It was worse than he expected. The message accused him of insubordination and reckless endangerment of coalition stability. He was ordered to return to his original mission immediately. If he refused, he would face court-martial. Humanity's voting rights in the coalition could be suspended. Economic sanctions might be imposed on human colonies. Minho read the message carefully, then sent a short reply. "We heard a distress call. We are responding. I thought that was what the coalition stood for." The response came back quickly. "The coalition stands for order, Captain Kang, not reckless compassion." Minho showed the message to Jinho, who read it and shook his head. They actually wrote that. Reckless compassion. "It's how they see us," Minho said. "Humans are too emotional, too unpredictable. We make decisions with our hearts instead of spreadsheets." "Is that such a bad thing?" Jinho asked. "They think so." Minho stared at the view screen. "The galaxy runs on calculations, cost versus benefit, risk versus reward. The Valorn have nothing to offer, so helping them makes no economic sense. It's that simple to them." "It's not simple to me," Jinho said quietly. On the third day of their journey, Minho made a decision that would change everything. He called Yuna to his ready room. The engineer arrived looking tired. She had been working non-stop to keep the engines running at maximum output. "I need you to help me with something that might get us both thrown in prison," Minho said. Yuna grinned. "My favorite kind of project. What do you need?" "I want to send a message on all human channels. Military, civilian, commercial, private, every human in the galaxy. Can you set that up without Coalition Command shutting us down?" "Probably," Yuna said. "What kind of message?" Minho handed her a data pad with the text he had written. Yuna read it, and her grin faded into something more serious. "This is going to cause a lot of trouble," she said. "I know. Coalition Command is going to lose their minds. I know that too." Yuna looked at the message again, then nodded. "I'll set it up. Give me 2 hours." 2 hours later, Minho's message went out across every human communication network in the galaxy. It was simple and direct. "This is Captain Minho Kang of the exploration vessel Wandering Star. We have found a dying civilization. The Valorn people are facing extinction. 4 billion lives will be lost in a matter of days. We are responding to their distress call, but we cannot save them alone. We need help. If you can come to these coordinates, please do. We have no authority to order you. We have no right to ask this. But if you are human, and if you believe that hearing a cry for help means answering it, then come. Come now." The response from Coalition Command was immediate and furious. The human ambassador to the Coalition was summoned for emergency meetings. Messages flooded in demanding that Minho be arrested, that the Wandering Star be recalled, that humanity be sanctioned for this violation of protocol. But something else happened too. Something the Coalition didn't expect. Ships started coming. The first one arrived within 18 hours of Minho's message. It was a cargo hauler called the Lucky Dragon, captained by a woman named Minji Bay. She transmitted a simple message. "I'm not military. I'm just a merchant. But I have a cargo bay full of medical supplies and room for refugees. Where do you need me?" Then more ships came. A military frigate called the Soul's Pride with a crew of 200. A colony transport vessel that had been en route to a new settlement. Private yachts owned by wealthy humans who dropped everything to answer the call. Corporate ships whose crews voted to mutiny and change course. They came from Earth and Mars. They came from the outer colonies and the deep space stations. They came from mining operations and research outposts. Some were military vessels, but most were civilians. They were merchants and scientists and engineers and doctors and ordinary people who had families and jobs and responsibilities. They came anyway. By the time the Wandering Star reached the Valorn system, there were 57 human ships with her. More were coming every hour. Minho watched the fleet grow on his scanners and felt his throat tighten with emotion. He had asked for help, not knowing if anyone would come. Now hundreds of humans were abandoning their missions and duties to rush to a planet they had never heard of, to save people they had never met. Hana came to stand beside him on the bridge. "The Coalition is watching this," she said quietly. "I'm detecting observer ships from at least 20 different species. They're just sitting there, monitoring everything we do." "Let them watch," Minho said. "Maybe they'll learn something." The Valorn system appeared on the view screen. Even from orbit, Minho could see the devastation. The planet was covered in gray ash clouds. The oceans looked dark and lifeless. The temperature readings showed a world in rapid cooling. This was a planet in its death spiral. "Open a channel to the Valorn government," Minho ordered. The face that appeared on screen was alien but somehow familiar in its expression of hopeless despair. The Valorn leader's skin flickered with dim, sad colors. His 6 limbs hung limp at his sides. "I am Kiva of the Valorn Council," he said in translated speech. "We received your transmission, but we don't understand. The Coalition told us no help was coming. They said we were not members, that we were outside their jurisdiction. Why are you here?" Minho stepped forward so the Valorn could see him clearly. "Because you called for help," he said simply. "Because 4 billion lives matter. Because we're human, and humans don't leave people to die if we can do anything about it." Kiva's skin flashed with colors that the translator identified as shock and disbelief. "But why? We have nothing to give you. We cannot repay you. Our world is dying. Why would you risk so much for strangers?" Minho thought about all the reasons he could give. He thought about human history, about all the times people had helped others for no reason except that it was right. He thought about the definition of civilization, of what it meant to be part of a community that stretched across the stars. But in the end, he just repeated what he had said. "Because you asked for help. That's enough." Behind him, the fleet of human ships moved into position. 57 vessels and counting, all of them filled with people who had made the same impossible, irrational, beautiful decision. The galaxy was watching, and humanity was about to show them what reckless compassion really looked like. The human fleet grew larger every hour. By the end of the first day in orbit around Valora Prime, there were 237 ships. By the second day, over 400. They came in all sizes and shapes. Military carriers with thousands of crew members, tiny scout ships with just 2 people aboard, everything in between. Captain Minho stood in the command center that had been hastily set up aboard the carrier Indomitable Will. The massive warship had arrived 12 hours ago with its commander, Sora Huang, who immediately took charge of organizing the chaos into something resembling a plan. Sora was a career military officer with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had fought in more battles than Minho could count. Now she was using all that experience to coordinate the largest rescue operation humanity had ever attempted. "Give me the numbers," Sora said to her staff. A young analyst pulled up the data. 4.2 billion Valorn on the surface, 3 major continents, 17 large population centers, hundreds of smaller settlements. Current planet temperature has dropped by 15 degrees in the past 6 months and is falling faster every day. The ash cloud is blocking 92% of sunlight. Crop failure is total. Ocean acidification is accelerating. Estimated time until complete ecosystem collapse is 9 days. 9 days to save a world. It was impossible. Everyone in the room knew it was impossible. "What are our resources?" Sora asked. 416 ships as of now, the analyst continued. More arriving every few hours. We have approximately 80,000 personnel between military and civilian volunteers. Cargo capacity is sufficient to evacuate maybe 800 million if we pack people in like cargo. We have medical supplies, food rations, environmental suits, construction equipment. Dr. Tae-ho Kim arrived 3 hours ago with a terraforming research team and some kind of proposal. Get Dr. Kim up here, Sora ordered. While they waited, Hana pulled up images of the Valorn surface. The planet looked dead already. Ash covered everything. The cities were dark, their power grids failing. The Valorn were a people who had built beautiful things. Their architecture was elegant, full of curves and colors. Now it was all buried under gray powder. Dr. Tae-ho Kim arrived with a team of scientists carrying boxes of equipment. He was a thin man with wild hair and an excited expression that seemed out of place given the circumstances. He had spent his career studying planetary systems and terraforming techniques. Now he wanted to try something that had never been done before. "We can't evacuate everyone," Tae-ho said bluntly. "Even with all our ships, we can maybe save a fifth of the population, but I think I can buy us time." He pulled up a holographic model of Valora Prime. "The problem is the ash cloud blocking the sun and the temperature dropping. The volcanic activity is ongoing, pumping more ash into the atmosphere every day. Normal planetary recovery would take decades. But if we use every fusion reactor from every human ship in orbit, we can create a network of orbital heating stations." Sora frowned. "Heating stations?" "We position ships in a grid pattern around the planet," Tae-ho explained, moving holographic markers. "Each ship uses its reactor to generate focused energy beams into the upper atmosphere. Combined with solar reflectors deployed in strategic positions, we can create artificial thermal currents. It won't stop the cooling, but it will slow it. Instead of 9 days, we might have years." "Might?" Sora asked. "The math gives us a 23% chance of success," Tae-ho admitted. "But even if we fail, we'll have tried." Minho looked at the proposed plan. It would require stripping the reactors from hundreds of ships. Those ships would be dead in space, unable to move or defend themselves. If something went wrong, the fleet would be helpless. It was dangerous and desperate and probably doomed to fail. "Do it," Minho said. Sora looked at him, then nodded slowly. "Do it," she agreed. While Tae-ho's team began the massive work of converting the fleet into a planetary heating grid, the evacuation operation started on the surface. Minho went down with the first wave of shuttles. He wanted to see the Valorn up close, to understand what they were fighting for. The surface was worse than the images suggested. The air was toxic. The temperature was well below freezing. Ash fell constantly from the dark sky. The shuttles landed in what had been a park in one of the major cities. Valorn families huddled in emergency shelters, waiting to die. When the humans emerged in their environmental suits, the Valorn stared in disbelief. They had given up hope. The galaxy had abandoned them. Now aliens were arriving to carry them to safety. Minho worked alongside his crew, helping families board the shuttles. The Valorn were graceful creatures, their 6 limbs moving with an elegant coordination. Their skin glowed with bioluminescent patterns that showed their emotions. When they looked at the humans, their skin flashed colors that the translator identified as gratitude, wonder, and overwhelming sorrow. A young Valorn mother handed her child to Hana. The child was small and its skin barely glowed at all. The mother's patterns showed resignation and heartbreak. "Please take her," the mother said through the translator. "Save her. I will stay." Hana took the child gently. "We're taking you both," she said. "We're taking as many as we can." "There isn't room," the mother said. "You can't save everyone, so save the children first." All across the planet, that scene repeated itself. Valorn families making impossible choices about who would go to the ships and who would stay behind. The humans worked 20-hour shifts, loading shuttles, flying through ash storms, carrying people who had given up hope. Some humans didn't make it. The environmental suits failed in the harsh conditions. Shuttles crashed in the violent weather. People died trying to save strangers. But for every human who fell, 3 more volunteered to take their place. The coalition observer ships watched from orbit. Minho knew they were sending reports back to their governments, analyzing humanity's actions, trying to understand why humans would do this. One coalition admiral sent a direct message to Minho's ship. "Captain Kang, you must understand that what you're doing is irrational. You're sacrificing your species' political capital, your economic resources, and the lives of your crew for a civilization that will likely die anyway. This makes no sense by any calculation." Minho sent back a simple reply. "We're human. We don't always make sense. Sometimes we just do what's right." The admiral responded, "What is right is subjective. What is logical is universal. Then maybe the universe needs less logic and more compassion." There was no reply to that. On the fourth day in orbit, something unexpected happened. A coalition science vessel broke formation with the observers. It was a ship from the Sivaran species, who were known for following every rule exactly. The Sivaran ship quietly moved into position near one of the Valorn cities and began deploying construction equipment. The Sivaran captain sent a brief message. "We are not officially here. Our government has not authorized this. But we have equipment that could help with geothermal power stations. If you tell us where you need them, we will install them." Minho felt his eyes water. "Thank you," he said. "Do not thank us," the Sivaran replied. "We are ashamed it took us so long to do what was obviously correct." Then another ship broke ranks. Then another. Species that had watched for days suddenly found reasons to help. They delivered supplies, they provided technical expertise, they claimed they were just conducting training exercises or research projects in the area. Everyone knew the truth. The galaxy was changing. Not quickly, not easily, but it was changing. One act of compassion at a time. In orbit, Dr. Taiho activated his planetary heating grid. The fusion reactors of 400 human ships began pouring energy into Valora Prime's atmosphere. The orbital solar reflectors deployed. The numbers calculated and recalculated. The artificial thermal currents began to form. The temperature decline slowed, then stabilized. Against all odds, it was working. The rescue operation ran day and night for 8 days. Captain Minho lost track of time. He slept in 4-hour shifts when Sora or Hana forced him to rest. The rest of the time, he worked on the surface, coordinating evacuations, helping load refugees, making impossible decisions about who could be saved and who had to stay behind. The Valorn cities were emptying out. Children went first, then the elderly, then genetic specialists who carried knowledge of their species' biology, cultural preservationists who had memorized their history and art, scientists who understood their technology. Every shuttle that left the surface carried people who were essential to rebuilding Valorn civilization somewhere else. Every shuttle that left also meant leaving thousands more behind. On the 6th day, Minho met a Valorn named Kiva who worked in one of the city coordination centers. Kiva had organized thousands of evacuations, helped sort people into groups, kept records of who went where. He worked without rest, his skin patterns constantly flickering with exhaustion and determination. When Minho offered to evacuate him, Kiva refused. "I'm staying," Kiva said through the translator. "My family is already on your ships. They're safe. That's what matters. But someone needs to stay and help the ones who remain. Someone needs to make sure the final days are peaceful." Minho wanted to argue, but he understood. There was dignity in that choice. "What can we do for those who stay?" he asked. "Leave us supplies," Kiva said. "Food, heating equipment, power generators. Give us the tools to survive as long as possible. Maybe the planet will recover faster than expected. Maybe some of us will live to see it." "We're leaving all the orbital heating equipment," Minho said. "Dr. Tejo's grid is working. The temperature has stabilized. You'll have geothermal stations in all major settlements. It won't be easy, but your planet might be livable again in a few years." Kiva's skin flashed with hope and sorrow mixed together. A few years. Some of us might last that long. And if we do, we'll rebuild. We'll remember that humanity came when no one else would. On the seventh day, Engineer Yuna brought Minho a report that made him feel sick. They had evacuated 847 million Valorn. The number sounded huge until you remembered there had been 4.2 billion. They had saved less than 20%. We did what we could, Yuna said quietly. She looked exhausted. There were burns on her hands from emergency repairs she had done without proper safety equipment. We saved almost 1 billion people, Minho. That's not nothing. It's not enough, Minho said. It's never enough, Yuna agreed. But it's more than zero. Without us, every single one of them would have died. Now, almost 1 billion will live. They'll have children and grandchildren. The Valorn species will survive because we came. Minho knew she was right, but it still hurt. He thought about all the Valorn they were leaving behind, all the families that would die in the cold and dark, all the people who had watched the shuttles leave without them. On the 8th day, the last evacuation shuttle lifted off from Valora Prime. The human fleet began preparing to leave. The ships that had given up their reactors for the orbital grid stayed behind as permanent heating stations, their crews evacuated to other vessels. The Valorn refugees were distributed across the fleet, packed into every available space. Minji Bay, the merchant captain, took 3,000 Valorn aboard her cargo hauler. I was carrying manufactured goods, she told Minho. Furniture and clothing and stupid luxury items. I dumped it all in orbit. These people are more important than cargo. Across the fleet, that story repeated itself. Humans gave up their personal quarters to house refugees. They shared their food rations. They learned basic Valorn language to communicate. They comforted frightened children and grieving families. They did it without complaint. Commander Sora called a final meeting before the fleet departed. The senior officers gathered aboard the Indomitable Will. They all looked exhausted. Many had injuries. Everyone had lost weight. Some had lost friends. Final numbers, Sora said. We evacuated 847 million Valorn. We lost 63 human personnel in surface operations. Another 127 were seriously injured. We've left behind a functional orbital heating grid, 12 geothermal power stations, supply depots with food and equipment for the remaining population, and seed banks for future restoration. Dr. Taeho believes the planet will be marginally habitable within 3 years if the grid continues to function. She paused and looked around the room. We also created the largest humanitarian crisis response in human history. And we did it in 8 days. What about the political situation? Asked Jinho. What's going to happen to us? Sora's expression darkened. Coalition Command has issued formal sanctions against humanity. Our voting rights are suspended for 10 years. We face economic penalties. Captain Kang has been court-martialed in absentia. Multiple crews will face disciplinary action. The Coalition is very, very angry with us. Good, Minho said. Everyone looked at him. Let them be angry. We did the right thing. If they want to punish us for saving lives, that tells me everything I need to know about their precious coalition. There's more, Sora continued. 73 coalition species have filed formal complaints about our actions, but 147 species have filed something different. They're calling it a petition to amend Article 7 of Coalition Law. They want to create something they're calling the Valora Protocol. It would allow coalition members to respond to distress calls from non-member species. The room went silent. Will it pass? Hana asked. Nobody knows, Sora admitted. The debate will take months, maybe years. But the fact that it's being debated at all is something. We changed the conversation. Minho looked out the viewport at Valora Prime. The planet still looked gray and dead from orbit. But now it had a chance. The heating grid glowed in the darkness like a string of pearls around the world. Down there, billions had died. But some had survived, and humanity had proven something important. That night, Minho received a final message from Kiva, the Valorn who had chosen to stay behind. The message was simple and devastating. We called out to the stars for 6 months. We sent everything we were, everything we hoped to be, and the silence was the worst part. It told us we were alone, that in this vast galaxy, we didn't matter to anyone. Then you came. Not because we could pay you, not because we were allies, not because you had to, but because we asked for help, and that was enough. Most of my people are gone, but some survived because of you, and those of us who stay behind will die knowing that we were not alone, that someone cared enough to try. Thank you. Thank you for proving that compassion exists in the universe. Thank you for showing us that civilization can mean more than cold calculation. Thank you for being human. Minho read the message 3 times. Then he sat alone in his quarters and finally let himself cry. They had saved so many. They had lost so many more. It was the best they could do, and it would never be enough, and it was still worth it. The human fleet turned away from Valora Prime and began the long journey home. Behind them, the orbital heating grid continued its work. Below, billions of refugees began adapting to their new lives aboard human ships. And somewhere in the darkness, other species watched and wondered if maybe, just maybe, the strange humans had been right all along. 3 months passed. The human fleet had scattered across the galaxy, delivering Valorn refugees to human colonies that had volunteered to give them sanctuary. Captain Minho spent those months overseeing the integration efforts. It was messy and complicated. The Valorn needed different environmental conditions than humans. They ate different food. They communicated through skin patterns as much as through speech. Their family structures were different, their social customs unfamiliar. But it worked. Slowly, awkwardly, it worked. Human families hosted Valorn families. Human schools made room for Valorn children. Human engineers adapted their cities to accommodate a species with 6 limbs instead of 2. There were misunderstandings and mistakes, but there was also patience and goodwill. Both species learned from each other. Minho visited a human colony called New Sol, where 15 million Valorn had been resettled. He walked through a neighborhood where human and Valorn families lived side by side. He saw Valorn children playing with human children, the 2 species learning each other's games. He heard Valorn music mixed with human instruments, creating something beautiful and strange. Dr. Hana had taken a position at a research station where human and Valorn scientists worked together. She sent Minho messages full of excitement about everything they were learning from each other. The Valorn had technologies humans didn't understand. Humans had approaches to problems the Valorn had never considered. Together, they were creating new possibilities. But the political situation remained difficult. The coalition had formally sanctioned humanity. Economic penalties made trade more expensive. Human colonies lost access to some coalition resources, and Captain Minho Kong faced a court-martial for disobeying orders. The trial took place on the coalition homeworld, a massive space station called Unity Center. Minho stood before a panel of judges from 12 different species. They reviewed his actions and found him guilty of insubordination, unauthorized intervention in non-member affairs, and reckless endangerment of coalition stability. The charges carried severe penalties. But something happened during that trial that nobody expected. A Valorn named Kiva asked to testify. He was the same Kiva who had stayed behind on Valora Prime and somehow survived. The orbital heating grid had worked better than predicted. The planet was recovering faster than anyone hoped. About 300 million Valorn had survived on the surface, including Kiva. Kiva stood before the Coalition Council, his skin glowing with patterns of determination. He spoke through a translator, but his meaning was clear. For 6 months, my people called for help. We sent our distress signal to the stars. We transmitted everything we were, our culture, our history, our desperate plea for someone to care. And we received silence. 40 coalition ships heard our call, 40 ships from civilized species, and not one responded. The council chamber was silent. We learned something terrible in those months, Kiva continued. We learned that in your galaxy of billions we didn't matter. We were not members of your club, so our lives had no value. 4 billion people could die, and your response was to debate protocol. Some of the council members looked uncomfortable. Others remained impassive. Then humanity heard us, and they came. Not because we could pay them, not because we were allies, not because they had to, but because we needed help. And for humans, that was enough. They sacrificed their political standing. They risked sanctions and punishment. They gave up resources they could barely afford. Some of them died trying to save us. Kiva's skin flashed with colors that the translator struggled to interpret. Grief and gratitude and something like anger all mixed together. You want to punish Captain Kang for breaking your rules. But I want to ask you something. What kind of civilization creates rules that say you should ignore people dying? What kind of advanced society hears a cry for help and calculates whether it's cost-effective to respond? If this is what being civilized means, then maybe humanity's barbarism is superior. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species agreed with Kiva. Others argued that coalition law existed for good reasons. That unlimited intervention would lead to chaos. The argument raged for hours. In the end, Captain Kang was found guilty. He was stripped of his rank and dishonorably discharged from Starfleet. It was the price for saving 800 million lives. But something else happened at that trial. The petition to amend Article 7 gained momentum. The debate about the Valora Protocol spread across the galaxy. Young species and some mid-tier civilizations started asking questions their governments didn't want to answer. Questions like, when did we stop caring about people who need help? And, is following the rules more important than doing what's right? The vote took 6 months. In the end, the Valora Protocol passed by the narrowest margin in Coalition history. From now on, Coalition members could respond to distress calls from non-member species. There were limitations and oversight requirements. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. It was a crack in the wall of indifference that had defined the galaxy for centuries. 1 year after the Velorn rescue, Minho received a message from Starfleet Command. His court-martial had been quietly overturned. He was reinstated with full rank and honors. Nobody made a public announcement. Nobody apologized. But Minho received new orders assigning him to command the Wandering Star again, with a new mission parameter added. Respond to all distress calls, always. The Wandering Star had been refitted and upgraded. Her crew had grown larger, with both humans and Velorn serving aboard. Engineer Yuna had designed new systems specifically for rescue operations. Dr. Hana had assembled a team of specialists from multiple species. Even young Jinho had changed. He was still thoughtful and careful, but he no longer worried about breaking rules if it meant doing the right thing. On the first day of their new mission, they detected a distress call from a species called the Tarmus, medical crisis, requesting assistance. Minho didn't hesitate. Set course, maximum speed. As the ship prepared to jump to faster-than-light travel, Hana came to stand beside Minho on the bridge. You know the Coalition is still watching us. They think we're too emotional, too reckless. Let them watch, Minho said. Maybe they'll learn something. Do you think we changed anything? Hana asked. Really changed anything? Minho thought about the Velorn children growing up on human colonies. He thought about the species who had broken ranks to help during the rescue. He thought about the Velora Protocol and all the debates it had sparked. He thought about Kiva's words to the Coalition Council. Yes, he said, we changed something. We reminded the galaxy that before there were rules and protocols and calculations, there was compassion. We proved that sometimes the most important thing you can do is hear someone calling for help and answer. The wandering star jumped to faster-than-light speed. Behind them, other ships were beginning to follow humanity's example. Not many yet. Not enough. But a few coalition vessels had quietly updated their mission parameters to allow distress call responses. The Sivaran had built 3 rescue ships based on human designs. Even some of the elder species were reconsidering their policies. The infection was spreading slowly through the galaxy. The dangerous idea that compassion mattered, that lives had value beyond economic calculation, that civilization should mean helping each other, not just following rules. In the outer fringe, another distress call echoed through the stars. This time, 3 species responded immediately. One of them was human. One was Valorn, serving aboard human ships. The third was a coalition member who officially claimed they were conducting training exercises in the area. Everyone knew the truth. They were there because someone needed help, and they had finally remembered that was reason enough. Captain Minho Kang smiled as he read the report. The galaxy was changing. Not quickly, not easily, but it was changing. One rescue at a time, one act of compassion at a time. One answered call at a time. Because that's what humans do. They hear someone crying for help, and they come running. It's irrational and reckless and beautiful. It's what makes them human. And slowly, carefully, the rest of the galaxy was learning to be a little more human too.